deep down somewhere, I swear I still see between the blank stares.
Welcome. This is part one of a three-part podcast with country singer and dementia advocate Jay Allen, presented by Dementia Action Alliance and Maude's Awards. Dementia Action Alliance is committed to helping people living with dementia by enhancing lives, connecting people, and increasing understanding. We are passionate people creating a better society in which to live with dementia through education and involvement. Please visit our website at daanow.org to view other podcasts, find valuable resources, and find ways to connect with other people living with dementia through our virtual discussion and engagement programs. Maude's Awards is dedicated to the discovery, celebration, and support for individuals and organizations developing innovative programs and practices of care that are enriching the lives of people living with dementia and their care partners. Their 2023 award winners will be announced on September 20th. Please visit their website at maudesawards.org. That's MAUDESAWARDS.org. I'm happy to host this podcast with Marilyn Rakel and Mark Timmons. Thank you for being here, guys.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laurie. It's good to be here.
I'm your host, Laurie Scherer, and I'm pleased to introduce co-host Marilyn Michelle from Maude's Awards, who will start the first podcast in this series. Marilyn, thanks so much for being here.
Oh, I can't tell you, it's my pleasure. And thank you. And thank you to Jay. And thank you to Mark. It's with enormous pleasure that I introduce country singer and dementia care advocate Jay Allen. He is known for his appearance on The View and for his song Blank Stares, which achieved a nearly unbelievable 500 million views on Facebook. I tell that to people and they don't believe it. Blank Stares was written to honor his mother, who passed from Alzheimer's. And it showcased Jay's talent and his dedication to raising awareness for the Alzheimer's Association. And as a result of his advocacy efforts in so many areas, he has received numerous accolades, including the Caregiver Award from the National Alzheimer's Association. Jay, thank you again for sharing your time with us today.
Thank you, Marilyn. What a blessing to be on here with you.
I will tell you that because I was a care partner with my mom for 9 years, your song Blank Stares resonates so deeply with me because I saw those stares often. And it is so remarkably wonderful when those stares just disappear and she looks at you with love and recognition. And so I like to listen to it just to remind myself of that joy, of that miracle when that happens. And so I would love to start with your mom's journey, your journey with her, and how it affected you and your family.
Sure. How much time we got today, Marilyn? Oh, let me roll back to the very, very beginning. So I grew up in a very small town in northeast Iowa, and I kind of always felt like I was going to be the one to leave. I just felt like I was supposed to go somewhere else. And I ran away at a very young age. I think I was 20 years old when I ran away. And I remember I didn't even tell my mother because I knew it'd break her heart. So 2 hours outside of town, I called her and told her, and it did. It broke her heart. She cried over the phone, but we talked every day, and I ended up being a music director at mega churches. I did that for a long time. And then I never thought that I'd go to Nashville. Honestly, did everything in my power to not go to Nashville until one day the person I was with at the time, my now ex, she woke me up and she said, "Jay, you need to go to Nashville. Otherwise you never will. You'll always regret it." And over a couple of weeks' time, she convinced me. So I made that 10.5 hour, 11-hour drive by myself to Nashville. I literally had nothing to my name but one suitcase and one guitar. And Nashville's a tough place to get on your feet. I've been here for 10 years now, but the only way that I could get my start, especially financially, it's really tough. It's really expensive here. A friend of mine knew a couple that lived right outside of Nashville, and they happened to have an in-law suite in the back of their home. And they opened their doors to me and they let me stay there free of charge. I immediately, obviously, I don't want a handout ever. So I took a full-time job as I was trying to get plugged into the community of Nashville. And I was starting a band and all these things and writing songs every day. I would write a check at the top of every month. I'd put it in their kitchen and I'd come back home and they would rip up the check and they'd put it back in my kitchen. They would not let me pay it down to stay there. That was literally the only way that I was allowed the freedom to get on my feet and afford to get plugged into Nashville. So I still keep in touch with them. Actual angels. I believe God put them in my life for that reason. So, a couple years in, I was kind of on my feet running. I had my first publishing deal. If you don't know what a publishing deal is, that means you basically get hired by a company in Nashville to write songs and they pitch them to other artists. So I was doing that full time, almost writing 2 songs every day, 6 days a week, and just really, really grinding, trying to figure out my path. And I had a little bit of success where I had a song that was added to Sirius XM The Highway. They made me what's called the Highway Find. I signed on with an agency. I started touring, and it's a good feeling, as I started to have success, but it also felt a little empty. I still didn't feel like there was a purpose to it. It felt like it was solely just for me and no one else, until my mom got sick. And, again, long story short, not to be long-winded, but my dad called me, basically how it all started. And he let me know that mom had been showing signs of dementia for a while, and he kind of kept it to himself. Kind of threw a blind eye to it, and he said, you have to know what happened this morning. He said, I feel like it's gotten real, where she had been going to the same place of work for years and years and years. But that morning she called him crying. She had pulled over on the side of the road and she said, Joe, I don't know where I am. I don't know where I'm going. Please pick me up. I'm scared. And so that's when it did become real for us. She was then officially diagnosed with what's called early onset Alzheimer's. She was 51 years old. They call it early onset because she was so young, and it's so rare to be diagnosed at such an early age. Now, that I've become an advocate and bringing awareness to this disease for quite a few years now, I've heard stories of people my age getting diagnosed with Alzheimer's, which is unreal to me. The next phone call, never forget, my dad said, this is progressing quickly. It had been about 6 months, and 51, 52, it looked like she had already aged like 15, 20 years. It was just stealing her life. Almost every day it seemed to affect her in a negative way. So he made that same drive to Nashville with my mother. She was terrified to travel, so finally convinced her. I was her only son. I was her oldest child. So she raised me like that. I was the center of her world. And I knew it. She loved me deeply. I never, ever questioned that. I had a sense of confidence in that. So there's one thing I think I'll miss the most is the way a mother looks at a son, the way a mother looks at any of her children. I expected that look when she walked in the door of my home, and that is the opposite of what I received. My mother looked at me like I was a stranger and looked through me, and it deeply hurt me. I think it kind of broke something inside of my young spirit. And, we have 2 options in life. I talk about this a lot. You can choose to fight or you can choose to flight. And I've always been fight, like all of us. If there's an obstacle in our way, we'll find a way. But in that moment, I think I was so deeply hurt and overwhelmed and wondering how this could happen to us. I chose flight for maybe the first time ever. And I said, we got to get out of here. I don't know how to deal with this. So my dad got my mama all dolled up, and we took her out to a well-known venue in Nashville called the Sutler Saloon. And music is everywhere here in Nashville. And I didn't even think about it, but we opened up the door and there was a band playing on stage. And I remember my mom just kind of had this bewildered look on her face. She took one step inside, and people that have dementia and Alzheimer's, when they're pretty far in, they kind of lose that little sparkle in their eye and they have a blank stare. And suddenly when she saw the band and she heard the music, vanished. And she wanted to go inside. She was trying to talk. She wanted to dance. So being the oldest, I have two little sisters. I've always been the guy that tries to find a solution to fix whatever's going on in our family. So I saw an option to find a solution. I took advantage of that moment. I pulled her in front of everyone, in front of that stage in that venue, and Mom and I started slow dancing to a fast song. And it was really, really cool to see the band catch on. We were the only ones on the dance floor, and I remember the lead singer looking down at me, and he just kind of nodded and he winked, and he had the band slow everything down, and it was very like a worshipful moment, musical moment. And then I just felt my mother, who's very sick, take this really deep, heavy breath, and she leaned in and she whispered to me, "Oh, Jay, I've missed you. Jay, I love you." And for that moment, I had my mother back with me in my arms. And then in that moment, I realized this is happening because of music. We all hear about the power of music. What is that? I thought I had experienced it already in my young life because I was a music director at churches. And my job was to create an environment where people can worship Jesus and have these emotional, spiritual moments. But I hadn't fully experienced that until this moment where I saw music take someone that's very sick and wake them up. So for that moment, I have my mama back. I write songs for a living. I'm one of the few, and I know that I'm very lucky, very blessed. But I got to work my butt off to write a good song. I'm not like my beautiful wife, Miss Kylie Morgan, who wakes up in the middle of the night, writes a full song, goes back to bed. It's like breathing for her. For me, I got to work really, really hard at it. But in that moment, I suddenly felt overwhelmed by this concept, and I had the melody and the idea and the hook and everything. And it was a sad moment, but it was something that I feel like God put on my heart to turn into something beautiful. And the hook line was, "I still see you. I still see you in between those blank stares, and I'm going to fight for you." And so that's the moment I decided to write that song and go to war for my mama. She was very shy and very selfless, very to herself. She would never want a spotlight on her, but she would do anything for the people she loved, including her oldest son. And so because I knew that was a fact, I decided I was going to do the same for her. So I took that idea to the publishing company I was writing at the time on Music Row, called Sony. And it was just me and my good buddy, Jason Nix. And I remember I walked into the room that morning and I said, "Buddy, I have this idea. I want to write a song for my mother." And I played him this voicemail that I had kept. My dad had her dial my number. He dialed it for her. And then she was going to wish me happy birthday on my birthday, of course. And I remember I was busy, so I wasn't able to pick up, but she left a voicemail. And halfway through the voicemail, she like fumbles through her words and she hangs up the phone. And it was like she forgot even who she was calling or why she was calling, why she even had the phone in her hand. And that was the dementia, So I kept that voicemail and I listened to it often just to remind myself what was happening because, it's easy to slip into the naivety of this isn't happening to us. She's going to get better. But I listened to it almost every day to remind myself this is happening. And so I played him that voicemail, Jason, in that room that morning. He goes, "Who is that?" And I said, "This is my mother. Today I want to write a song for her." And he said, "Yes, sir." So that's what we did. And when you're signed to a publishing company, as far as I know in Nashville anyways, once your song is done, completed, you turn it in. You turn it into the publisher. And so that's what we did. And a couple of days later, I got a call from the president of Sony. And he said, "Jay, I'm listening to your song in my office and got tears in my eyes because I know what it's about. You don't even have to tell me what it's about." He said, "You don't know this, and I haven't shared this with a lot of people, but my dad had Alzheimer's, and I was his care partner, as y'all would say, for 5 years, the last 5 years of his life." And he said, "I want to make a deal with you, buddy." He said, "If you promise me that every dime that we make from this song, we give back towards the fight against this disease in some manner, then I promise you that I will get this song in front of some very important people." And I said, "Yes, sir." And that's what he did. Before I knew it, we were hearing blank stares on Sirius XM, on other, stations, even terrestrial stations, and on country stations. It is very hard to get a song on country radio. It's almost impossible. It's like winning the lottery or getting a gold medal. And there's a lot of hoops and there's a lot of money involved. But a lot of stations around the country wanted to interview me, and they wanted to play that song, and they did without me even trying. And then I started getting phone calls from the National Alzheimer's Association, and they invited me to perform at my first ever gala. Back then I called it gala because I was uneducated. I was corrected very quickly. But I remember I show up, and it's this beautiful event center in San Jose, California. And I'm standing in the back of the room, and I realize I'm a little out of place because everyone's wearing suits and ties and cocktail dresses, and I'm wearing a t-shirt like this with holy jeans and cowboy boots. And suddenly Kimberly Paisley, Brad Paisley's wife, the famous actress, she walks on stage and eloquently invites me and my band to come on stage. And I remember getting up there, and I look down and I see Mark Zuckerberg, the head of Facebook. He's in the crowd, and then I see Garth Brooks with his cowboy hat right in the front row looking at me, and I'm like, what is happening? So I just did what they asked me to do. I told the story, and I sang the song, and I did it as honestly as I could, as I knew how. And the next thing that happened, it really altered how I live my days now, and how I see the world, my perspective on life. After I sang the song, obviously very emotional, everyone stood up, and we all just kind of hugged each other and clapped and cried. And it didn't matter in that moment if you were Garth Brooks or if you were Jay Allen. Didn't matter if you were famous or not. It didn't matter how successful you were, how much money you had. We all had this common ground, and I saw a human's nature to really desire community and connectivity and knowing that you're not alone. And so that night, they raised a couple $1,000,000. I was a part of that for the first time. And that turned into just several opportunities where I just made a personal decision to try to say yes to everything that came my way. So that's what I did. And I learned along the way kind of what my purpose was becoming. And for a long time, it felt like almost a burden. And I had like an anger inside of me. And I was really going to war, but with the wrong heart. And we can talk about that a little later. But really what happened along the way is, I ended up 5, 6 years later looking up, and I felt be a part of raising over $100 million. We've raised another couple $1,000,000 this year. And now it's not just going towards research to find treatments. And we've made a lot of headway this year, especially, which is really, really nice to see. Unfortunately, being on the inside, I've learned that there's a lot of people that are money hungry, and they are finding a way to make money off of a sickness, which is really sad. But we made a lot of headway this year, and then my heart has really changed even more so to put focus on the people that take care of the people that are sick. We just talked about that behind the scenes, where people that are care givers, or as y'all say, care partners, which I think is beautiful. They are those people because they're so humble, and they don't want a light shined on them. They don't desire it, and they don't need it. But I think it needs to be shown, because those are the most beautiful people in the world, and they can really teach us a lot. So I've been shining more of a focus on that. So along the way, unfortunately, my mother passed away. She was 54 years old. I was on the road when I got a phone call from my little sister telling me, this is going to be the last time you speak to your mother. And I remember the band just pulled over. We were somewhere in between Carolina and Georgia. They wrapped their arms around me, and we just cried as I talked to Mom for the first time. She couldn't speak, and she had just lost the ability to swallow. So they knew for a fact she wouldn't make it through the night, and she didn't. I'm glad I got to have that last conversation. I regret that I wasn't there to hold her hand, but I'm glad that my father was. He fell asleep holding her hand, and she passed away with their fingers together like this, which I think is so stunning. But I had to continue being an artist and being an advocate, and even though I was still grieving. So it has been a journey. I'm thankful to say now and we're going to talk about spirituality later, but I'm I'm thankful that God found me in my darkest place and he was patient with me, because I've never been happier. I get to do music for a living. I get to help people with music. I have a partner in life, Miss Kylie Morgan. We get to do it together, and we're big champions for each other and get to walk through this together. And something that was very painful and very sad was turned into something beautiful. And I like to say it this way: the loss of my mother's life gave my life purpose. So that's kind of how we live our days now.
That's amazing. I mean, I was going to ask you about how you find joy in my life, but your life is filled with joy. When I first started becoming a care partner with Mom, I resisted it for years because she told us that when we get Alzheimer's, you're supposed to walk away. Just leave us. We're not going to remember you. We're not going to recognize you. Just walk away. And we all sort of believed it. And then she started to paint. And she started to paint these amazing paintings, and they were so incredible. And then I went, I see. She is still here. She is still living with purpose and with passion and with joy. And the paintings were so amazing. And so I took that first step. I let go of the woman who used to be, and I embraced the woman who was with me in the moment. And it made all the difference. Together, we started to navigate a life with late stage dementia. And the next 9 years, I was her care partner. And it opened up a world that I had no idea, including all of her neighbors, because I realized that she had a new family. And because she lived in this great assisted living facility. And so she had a new family. And I was lucky enough that they accepted me into their family. So I had 6 new adopted mothers. So it was this really great. And they were all different, and they were all living with joy because they lived in a nurturing, supportive environment. And so when you talk about the care partner and support for care partners, that's so important. And as a country, we're sort of letting everybody down. So I was going to ask you about, you've talked about all the joy. Can you talk about 1 or 2 moments of joy that you really wanted to talk about in terms of your life before, after, or during?
Yeah, that first moment where I realized, okay, you can kind of pull Mom out, and that was the first one was music, and then I realized there was other ways to kind of find her and pull her out. So I would do everything in my power to make her laugh, in which we did many, many times. So those are some of my joys. I remember we took her to a store in Nashville, and we let her try on cowboy hats, and she'd look in the mirror and she would just die laughing. She thought it was the funniest thing. So, and then she loved ice cream. So we got her on a sugar high full of chocolate ice cream. And then I'd say, Mom, make a funny face. And she'd make the funniest face. I'd take a picture and I'd show her, and she'd die laughing. So, we talk about finding joy in the darkness, and we really went out of our way to do that while she was still alive. After the fact, I will be honest and say I lost my joy for a little bit. I lost my way for a little bit. And there was a moment where I talk about this on stage. I have a song called Whiskey Prayer. And I've learned if I'm going to be the guy on a microphone with a light on him on a stage and people are looking at me, the best way that I can utilize that opportunity is to be completely raw and transparent with everyone and talk about even my darkest moments, even the moments I'm not proud of, because then that creates a kind of a safe place for people to share what they're going through and admit that they're struggling if they are, talk about their struggles or all the above. So I'm always the guy, be super honest. I love a good beer. So I'm always the guy that's on stage with the Michelob Ultra. But when Mom got sick, I started taking it too far, and I was really, instead of facing what was happening, I decided I was going to get numb to it. And I think that's part of being just a young person and not knowing how to handle the situation. I didn't have the right people around me. So I found myself after a show in a bar. The band was already gone back at the hotel, and I was just alone drinking. A really sad moment. And I call this my R-rated prayer. A lot of times I think when we pray, especially in public, we hold back the punches, And in that moment, I didn't hold back any punches in my little stupor. And I kind of cussed out God. And that was the most real I'd ever been. And, I really faced everything in that moment. And, God always hears you, I believe, but he met me. He met me right there. And so I wrote the song called Whiskey Prayer because I believed in that moment I didn't deserve to be heard, but I was. And I've never been happier since. Now, the moments of joy after, once I decided to really intentionally face the fire and, kind of fix myself and focusing on being the best version of me. And it was not just for me. It was, if I'm going to be, a point person that brings awareness to the sixth leading cause of death in America, I better have the character that matches. If I'm going to be a good son and a good big brother, and if I think that I'm going to be a husband, I better have the character that matches all those things. My traits better match up. I better be worthy of that. So I started working on all those things, and then the reward started coming after that. When I intentionally focused on bettering myself, that's when I could help everyone else fully. So I got married last year. Took a long time to get to the point where I was worthy of being a husband, and I'm glad to say we had a beautiful wedding. It got rescheduled because Hurricane Ian came through Fort Myers and wiped out our wedding venue. But God was pretty cool to us, and there was another wedding venue that heard our story, reached out and offered it to us for free. So that was just a magical moment, and we actually just got the wedding video back, so her and I watched it one evening and just cried. My family, honestly, my mother was kind of the glue, and but my dad and I were never really close. But after the fact, we had a little conversation when Mom got sick, and I took it upon myself to be really clear with my dad. And I said, "Make me a deal, Dad." I said, "No, we haven't been close. We actually, before Mom got sick, my dad and I hadn't spoke for 2 years. And so Mom got sick, and I called him, and for personal reasons that now I see don't really matter. But I remember that happened. I called him. I said, "Let's make a deal. You promise me you take care of Mom and love her with your whole heart, and be loyal to her to the very end. You and I are good. Nothing can break our bond." And he said, "Yes, sir." And he kept that promise. When during her visitation, I noticed we had an open casket. I noticed, so her hands were crossed on her chest, and there it looked like it was like a Hallmark card under her hands. And I thought maybe just someone slipped it underneath her hand. I didn't really question it. So 6 hours later, the visitation's wrapping up. Me and my little sisters are in the back of the room. We're just talking and crying. And out of the corner of my eye, I see my dad slip away. And he's always been that kind of guy where he's got to get attention on himself some way or another. But something changed, and in this moment, he didn't say anything to anyone. And I watched him slip away, and he went to the casket. And he leaned over her casket, and he pulled that card out from underneath her hands. And she had died around Valentine's Day. So he had written a hand note to her, her last Valentine's Day card. And he read it to her quietly and just wept over her body. And then he put it back under her hands, and he walked away, walked out the back, and didn't say anything to anyone. And that's when I felt like he fully kept his promise, and he really, truly did love my mother till the end. And that was, even though it was sad, it was still like a moment of joy, my dad and I have never been closer. Every time I come through the Midwest to play a show, he's there. He's in the front row. He's fist bumping, singing every word at the top of his lungs. He's in the green room with us. And he's been an awesome dad, So again, the story of, loss, bringing something beautiful to our lives. So I have endless stories like that, things and moments and times of joy because of it.
That's so incredible. That's so incredible. All right, do you have any advice for someone who's starting this journey?
Oh, I have so much advice. First of all, I would say you need to realize that it's so easy to get trapped inside of your own skin. We all only see out of our own eyes. We only experience things in our own way. It's so easy to believe the lie that you're alone, that there could be no one else going through this or hasn't gone through it in the past. You're wrong. There's a lot of people going through this, and they have, and they are, and they will be. So even though it's difficult, I almost demand people try to be brave. I even have this moment during my set, halfway through the set, where we allow people to come on stage and share their stories. And it's a hard thing to do, but I almost like will them, please be brave. Because when you're brave and you talk about what you're going through, even you've believed the lie that you're the only one going through it. When you actually speak it out loud and share your heart and your agony and your pain and your sadness, your eyes are open, because then everyone else has that open door to share what they're going through. And you realize you're the furthest thing from alone. And people want to wrap their arms around each other. Our human nature is to help each other. Whether you believe it or not, our human nature is to help each other and have community. That's why we have communities in towns, in cities. People want to come together, so talk about it. Be brave. My biggest regret is, this is my personal regret, is that instead of just going home to be with my mother, to hold her hand, to wrap my arms around her, to have those last conversations, I personally decided to, like I said, go to war and go out on the road and do every interview possible. And I'm thankful that I did. I know you can't live life with regrets, but if you can, be present. Even though it's hard to see them that way, and they call it the longest goodbye for a reason, and you have to say goodbye twice and all these things, just be there. Hold their hand, talk to them. Do whatever you can to give yourself, more than anything, those final moments or weeks or months or years, because you'll never get them back, my friend. So just be there.
Everybody who has a family member living with dementia should listen to you, should hear you. You're doing so much good, and your mother is still with you, as you know. And I always say, smile, just smile, relax, and smile. So, you're such an inspiration, and you're so joyous. And I'm so happy and pleased to have the opportunity to speak. That was something, to speak with you. It's just been a pleasure. I can't tell you how much.
The feeling is reciprocated, Marilyn. Thank you. You're a dear angel. Thank you for your heart, because it's a rare one.
Oh, I think we're out there. We're out there.
Yeah.
There are too many people who think that people living with dementia aren't there. And I always go, but they are. They're right here. All you have to do is listen to them and love them.
That's right.
Jay and Marilyn, we want to thank you for your time today. And we look forward to podcast number 2.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
DAA is a nonprofit 501c3 corporation. If you would like to help us continue this and other programs to support people living with dementia, you can make a donation through our website, daanow.org. Thank you.
It's getting harder and harder to watch you disappear. Oh, you're falling farther and farther and leaving me in tears. If I could only see the cracks you're slipping through. Wish I didn't feel so helpless when it comes to helping you hold on. But I keep